Hi, I'm Effie and this is What Effie Reads. Today I'm going to be talking about a few books coming out in 2022 that are on my radar.
I was lost, but you helped me find my way. Tainted by a desire, 'cause I was scared to face the truth. You pulled me out from my anxiety.
I guess essentially this is an anticipated releases video, but these are kind of books that I would like to get to, but they're sort of a lower priority than my owned TBR and my pre-orders. As was the case with my pre-orders video, these books are in no particular order. Some of these books I have looked into a fair bit and some of them are just kind of authors or books that I've heard about and would be interested in picking up possibly. So first up we have Wild as the Witch by Rachel Griffin. This is the same author as The Nature of Witches, which I also still haven't read, but I feel like it will be my kind of book. Wild as the Witch follows Iris Grey, a powerful witch who has vowed to not use magic again after a deadly night of using magic. She vents her power by writing curses, and one day the curse that she writes to vent her power accidentally gets snatched up by an owl, and if that owl dies the curse will be enacted, so she is forced to team up with the person that she wrote the curse about to try and track down the owl and make sure the curse isn't enacted. Next up we have The Kindred by Alechia Dow. This is a sci-fi novel where people have mind pairings with people. We've got a commoner who happens to be mind paired with a royal prince, and after the rest of his family is assassinated, he is the primary suspect and the two of them have to work together, I guess, to figure out what's going on, and they also end up escaping to the backwards planet of Earth. The next book on my list is Nona the Ninth by Muir. I have literally no idea what this book's about, but I've heard really good things about Gideon the Ninth and I own Harrow the Ninth, so it's on my radar. Obviously I have to read Gideon and Harrow first, but assuming I read those two, I also would want to read Nona the Ninth. The next book on my list is The Ruins by Phoebe Wynne. This is the same author as Madam, which was a really creepy gothic story that took place in a remote Scottish boarding school where things weren't quite as they seemed. I absolutely adored the dark tone. I thought it was really clever the way things were foreshadowed right at the start, and I am very intrigued to read her next book. I feel like the blurb doesn't actually give me that much information on what the book's about. It seems to centre on this crumbling French chateau, but in terms of what the story actually is, I'm not sure, but I'm sure I will be pleasantly surprised when I do read it, especially if it's half as good as Madam. The next book, I don't even know if it's out this year. Oh, well, it said in the sort of announcement that it was out in fall 2022. Last time I checked, I couldn't find it on any platforms, but that's not to say it isn't out this year, and it is Fraternity by Andy Mientus. It is set at an all-boys boarding school, and a secret society of queer kids finds a book of dark magic and they use it to find their own magic, but it comes at a great cost. Next up we have Love and Other Disasters by Anita Kelly. From what I understand, this is a romance following two competitors on a cookery competition show. We've got Dahlia Woodson and London Parker, and London Parker has a lot to prove as they are the competition's first non-binary contestant. It sounds like it's going to be funny, cute, generally something that I could enjoy. The next book on my list is A Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers. This is the second Monk and Robot book. The first one was my second favourite book of 2021, so I'm excited to return to this world. I found it a really comforting read, and there was something really affirming about it following two non-binary agender protagonists. The next book on my list is Tiger on It by Yoon Lee. It seems to be a story about a tiger spirit who wishes to follow in their uncle's footsteps of being a renowned space pilot. It sounds like it's going to be science fiction and one of these where they need to clear someone's name and uncover all these different dark secrets. The next book on the list is The One True Me and You by Remi K. England. This takes place at a kind of Comic-Con situation where you've got a fanfic author who is possibly looking to try out they them pronouns and just have a generally great time. You've got a bully. The blurb doesn't make it completely clear how the bully fits into the larger story. And then you have a kind of closeted beauty pageant queen, and it just seems like it's going to be cute, chaos ensuing. I think it's YA. The blurb reads like it's going to be YA, but regardless, I think it's just going to be a really enjoyable read. Next up, we've got Bitter by Akwaeke Emezi. This is, I believe, a prequel to Pet, which I also haven't read, and I think it follows Pet's mother, an artist. Next up, we've got The Whale Tattoo by John Ransom. Just the opening of this blurb has me really intrigued. It says a sperm whale washes up on shore and tells our protagonist that death will follow him everywhere. And that's pretty much all I need to know. Next up, we've got Chef's Kiss by TJ Alexander. This book is a queer rom-com where we've got a highly strung pastry chef who is very career driven, and their world gets shaken upside down when an attractive non-binary kitchen manager joins their restaurant. The next book is Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sulin Tan. This is a book that I think has been like massively hyped. I feel like it's been everywhere and obviously is appearing in some book boxes. It seems to be a retelling of the Chinese mythology of the moon goddess. The next book on my list is Beasts of a Little Land by Juhea Kim. This follows a young woman who is sold to a courtesan school in Pyongyang and ends up fleeing to Seoul, where she meets an orphan boy who begs on the streets to sustain himself, and they end up forming a friendship. And I think I don't have much knowledge of the history of Korea, but I think the shadow of a revolutionary war is over their heads behind all of it as well. So the next book that's on my list isn't actually out until next year, but it's on my list, so I guess we're going to talk about it. And it is The Whispers by Ashley Audrain. It sounds like it's going to be a domestic thriller where one boy's fall out of a bedroom window has an impact on 4 different families. Ashley Audrain is the author of The Push. That was a really, really compelling, I don't know if it's technically a domestic thriller, but it was overall a very compelling book, and I'm very intrigued to see what she does next. The next book on this list is The Sunbearer Trials by Aiden Thomas. It's a Mexican-inspired fantasy where 10 semidios have to compete in a set of trials. The winner gets the honour of carrying light and life to the temples of Reino del Sol, and the loser ends up being sacrificed to sustain the kingdom for another 10 years. These 10 semidios are handpicked by Sol himself as being the most worthy of competing. So Tio, our 17-year-old protagonist, doesn't expect to be picked, so it's a massive surprise when they are thrown into this competition. I am an absolute sucker for a tournament or a trial, so I'm so excited to read this. The next book on my list is A Tempest of Tea by Hafsah Faizal. We haven't got much of a blurb so far. We've got like a paragraph. It says, King Arthur meets Peaky Blinders with vampires. The novel follows a gang of outcasts in a deadly heist led by Arthur Casimir to save her tea room, which fronts an illegal bloodhouse where local vampires can purchase fresh blood. So not only is it by the amazing Hafsah Faizal, but it also heavily features vampires. That feels like a book that's just perfectly crafted for me. Next up we have Babel by R.F. Kuang. It seems to surround a library of translation. At the centre of the story is Babel, the Royal Institute of Translation, and we're following a character called Robin Swift, who was orphaned in Canton and then brought to England, which seemed like a paradise until it became more like a prison, and now they have to fight the institute. I'm not 100% sure. The blurb leaves it very open-ended, which makes it all the more exciting to jump in and discover what it's all about. The next book on my list is The Bone Orchard by Sara A. Mueller. In this story, a dying emperor charges his favourite concubine to figure out who is responsible for his murder and stop them from taking power after he dies. Next up, we have The Chosen 12 by James Breakwell. This seems to be a post-apocalyptic sci-fi story where a group of people are charged with recolonization after robots deleted the rest of The humans, I'm not 100% sure. It's another one where the blurb seems really vague, but also the first line is there are 22 candidates, there are 12 seats, which makes me think it's going to be like a trial or a tournament. But clearly when I first saw it, I thought it sounded interesting and like the kind of thing that I would like to read. The next book on my list is See You Yesterday by Rachel Lynn Solomon. And what really drew me to this book is that it centres around a Groundhog Day-esque story where the character is stuck in the time loop with their nemesis, which sounds like a really interesting concept, and I'm intrigued to see how it's explored. The next book we've got is The Red Palace by Juhea. This follows a young woman who has managed to get a place as a palace nurse, but is then forced to figure out who has murdered 4 people after the prime suspect is her mentor, and then things start to point towards the murderer actually being the crown prince. So it's a little bit of a murder mystery, and it is set in 1758 Korea. Next up we have Witchlings by Claribel A. Ortega. It is a middle grade Latinx witch story where everyone is sorted into different covens, and there are people who end up as spares, and a group of spares have to gather together to overcome an impossible task or face being turned into toads forever. I think it might be the start of a new series, but it sounds like it's going to be really sweet and I look forward to reading it. The next books on my list are a little bit embroiled in controversy now. When I put them on the list, obviously this was before all this happened. This author has reacted rather negatively to critical reviews of her work, and basically it soured everyone's impression of this book. I feel very conflicted about this because obviously it is not the space for authors to do this, and from what I understand this author was quite harassing. So I don't know what to feel about these books. I don't know if I will still pick them up. But I am including them because I was very interested in reading them before all this went down. And they are The Night and Its Moon, The Sun and Its Shade, The Gloom Between Stars, and The Dawn and Its Light, all by Piper CJ. And it is described as a dual POV high fantasy series following Nox and Amaris as they navigate growth through the continent of Girardin, from their upbringing in the Fairholds northernmost orphanage to the separation that forces them to discover both who they are, who they need to become in order to survive. It sounds like it's got a lot of morally grey characters, and it is a queer series. As I say, I don't know if I will still pick these up, but I was very excited about them when I first heard. The next book on the list is a graphic novel, and it's called Chef's Kiss by Jarrett Melendez and Danik Brown. The story follows a recent graduate from university who is desperately trying to find a job in his field and discovers that everywhere wants way more than he has to offer. So he ends up getting a job at a restaurant after seeing a sign that says hiring, no experience necessary, and he thinks, oh, it's going to be temporary, except he ends up developing feelings for one of his co-workers. It looks to be really sweet, and I do love queer graphic novels, so I'm very much looking forward to this one coming out. The next book on my list is In Every Generation by Kendara Blake. All I need to know about this book is that it is a Buffy the Vampire Slayer story, and I desperately want to read it. The next book on my list is Wrath Goddess Sing by Maya Dean. This book says it draws on ancient texts and modern archaeology to uncover the trans woman's story underneath the Iliad, and that sounds like something that would be absolutely perfect for me. I am a lover of classics, and I also love a queer story in all its flavours. The next book on my list is A Tempest of Emerald Dream by William J. Wood. I think this is a book that I came across on TikTok, so I don't know too much about it, and the blurb is incredibly vague. It says, plagued by dreams of a forgotten land, Alechia Dow must travel where no one has before to defeat an ancient evil and restore peace to Malmar. She must find, sacrifice and kill the ones she loves to save everyone. So it sounds like a really... Oh, I think this one might be a villain arc. I'm not sure. But I do remember when it came up on TikTok being very, very intrigued to read it. And I think we'll leave it at that. This has actually been a really long list of books that are on my radar for release this year, and I'm almost certain that there's been more books that have popped up on my radar since I made the list, but that's just a little flavour of what I am excited about that's coming out this year. Let me know any books you're looking forward to coming out this year, and until next time, bye!
There's a place